In my advanced year, I produced a 5-minute short film titled Respawn. The narrative entailed the protagonist Dan, an idle teenager, unveiling that his reality is, in fact, virtual. Along with this task, I also had to complete 2 ancillary tasks, which acted as marketing for our main product, the film. These were a magazine review of Respawn and a film poster. In what ways does your media product use, develop, or challenge forms and conventions of real media products? A key part of the research and planning stage in the main task was exploring forms and conventions to be able to use, develop, and challenge in my own short film. As theorist Robert Stam suggests, genre is so hard to define due to the many ways of it being categorised, for example, by performer or budget. Therefore, short film could be a genre in its own right. Short films are such a diverse and versatile genre, showcasing many different narratives, styles and techniques, thus making it such a difficult task to be able to challenge its many conventions. However, Respawn can also fit into the hybrid genre of fantasy comedy. So, what genre conventions did I use in my short film? Firstly, the most obvious conventions of short film were used, such as short length. My film was only slightly over 5 minutes, under the short film time classification of 40 minutes or less, and much shorter than a feature film, the average length being 130 minutes. Other short films that I researched were also between 5 and 10 minutes, such as Goodbye Mr. Snuggles by Jonathan Hopkins, which is also just over 5 minutes. A common theme in short films is satire or pastiche. In Goodbye Mr. Snuggles, throughout the film, the use of binary opposites built up to a Mexican standoff scene between the 2 opposites, the clown and the old man. For example, cross-cutting between scenes of bright colour-corrected shots with fast circus-like music and dull colour-corrected shots with slow classical music, the pace quickening as the climax approached, highlighting these differences. The standoff pays homage to the Western films, even using desert-like colours and Western music. Respawn pays homage to the classic film The Good, the Bad and the Ugly by Sergio Leone by using the well-known standoff whistle but in a synth tone to carry on reflecting the technology theme, whilst using cross-cutting between the protagonist Dan and the antagonist car, varying different shots such as an extreme close-up of the eyes and headlights, and long shots as seen from behind each other's enemy. However, unlike Goodbye Mr. Snuggles and many other short films that parody or pay homage to other films, it is not a theme that lies throughout Respawn, and is only a small part of a larger narrative. Therefore, this is an element of short films that I have developed through taking the convention and instead of making it the driving force behind the narrative, I have made it a small part for comedic effect, also creating nostalgia for the audience members. Another convention used is the little or no use of speech or voiceover. The single use of speech in Respawn was purposed for comedic effect, also adding to the other genre category of Respawn, fantasy comedy. Dan blowing up before he gets the chance to complete his remark. This is similar to other short films I have researched, such as The Black Hole by Philip Sampson and Ollie Williams, where there is no speech at all as it features around a single character and does not add to the narrative. Any addition of speech may make the plot too complex for the brief time that filmmakers have to tell their story. The fantasy genre convention of temporal distortion was used through a series of repeating montages, which were the same shot for shot, and therefore showing the cycle of time repeating. This was key in telling the story, as it was the driving force behind the whole narrative. The convention of temporal distortion has been used many times in different fantasy films, such as in Harold Ramis's Groundhog Day, where Bill Murray's character is forced to live his day over and over again. A theme in the fantasy genre is mortality. This has been used because Respawn features the conflict between the binary opposites of life and death, as Dan struggles to survive the day and end his eternal cycle of rebirth and death. For example, in David Yates' Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, the idea of mortality is explored through the antagonist Harry cheating death through a magical resurrection stone, and the protagonist Voldemort cheating death through the splitting of his soul between many different Horcruxes that were made through the murder of other wizards so that he may become immortal. However, This theme is not only used, but also challenged, as Dan is never truly mortal or real in the first place. He is simply a series of code in a video game, only giving the appearance of a mortal being to himself and the audience until the twist at the end. How effective is the combination of your main product and ancillary tasks? Due to the narrative of Dan living in a virtual video game world, I have used the theme of pixels throughout all of my products. For example, the font Orange Kid has been used throughout all of my products. The titles in my short film, magazine review and poster have all used this pixelized font, and even some blog posts have featured it. The header for my blog page is made up of large pixels like in retro arcade games such as Street Fighter. I have chosen pixels to tie all of my products together, as the main theme amongst all of the products is video games. Therefore, by using pixels, it can be immediately associated with them because video games images were originally made up of large clunky pixels. In the audience feedback questionnaires, a large portion of the audience, 63%, revealed that the pixelated titles played a big part in helping them to fully understand the twist ending. My film poster worked well with my short film, as it immediately revealed to the audience the fantasy element of the genre through the odd costuming, such as a colander for a helmet and baking tray for chest armour, and body language of the protagonist running. However, Respawn is a fantasy comedy, a hybrid genre, yet this is not revealed in any way through the poster. The tagline, "Bad day, quit, restart," also reveals the fantasy genre and helps reveal the theme and twist for easier understanding, but again, it does not reveal the comedy elements. An original draft of my poster included the title at the top of the page. However, this looked more like a magazine cover, and so may have confused audiences into believing that Respawn was actually a piece of literature. Therefore, through rearranging other elements of the poster, such as critic quotes, I moved the main title to the middle between Dan's legs, appearing as if it was being hurdled over. This made it more immersed into the scene, therefore appearing more like other film posters I have researched, such as Fury, where the main title is incorporated onto the cannon of the tank. Audiences will recognise this subconsciously, as this is what they are used to seeing, and will therefore see it as an advertisement for a film and not. The magazine review also worked well in synergy with my short film, as it gave a balanced review on why and why not the reader should watch the short film. Yet in the end, it came out with a positive conclusion, making it not seem too biased, but at the same time appealing. The images to go with it, including the protagonist in the loading screen at the end, were colourful and unusual, making it look interesting, therefore attracting a potential audience. The pixelated font used in the main titles and drop capitals kept within the theming of the products. The image of Dan in his odd body armour was also a main element of the magazine review, the background of the review consisting of Dan standing in the road in the armour. This is also a factor that ties all of my products together, as they all feature the use of the strange body armour and the road where Dan gets ruthlessly mown down several times. What have you learned from your audience feedback? During the screening for my short film at a local theatre with other films from fellow filmmakers in my lectures, each audience member received a questionnaire to feedback on my film. These included questions that inquired about the demographic in order to see whether the data was reliable in terms of the audience meeting our target audience requirements. These requirements were that the participants were male, 17 to 40, and a creative industry professional or student. Other questions included whether the audience understood our twist ending and why, and if the special effects could be improved. Firstly, it was found that the audience who attended the screening was mostly representative of my target audience, especially in age demographic. Therefore, the results are accurate towards the target audience's opinions, and so any changes to be made will be representative of them. A trend was discovered after closely analysing the questionnaire data, showing that people who play video games, typically 40 and under, understood the twist ending better than those who do not play video games, 51 plus, and only 20% of the audience. This could be due to the fact that video game conventions were used in the short as hints towards the ending. Therefore, people who do not play video games are not accustomed to these codes, such as synth-like music, typical game fonts, and the idea of life and death in the virtual world. The pattern follows as this group also stated that the narrative was too repetitive and so became tedious. However, due to further analysis of the audience members who did not understand the ending as much, it was found that most of them were over 40 out of our target audience range. Therefore, we can disregard this minority's opinion. This shows that different life experiences can affect an audience member's reading of a text, and in this case, the target audience using the dominant hegemonic reading, whereas the 51 plus are using the negotiated reading. Special effects were used in Respawn's car crash scene, therefore the audience were asked their opinions on whether they needed any improvement. A large 63% of participants stated that the car crash scene needed a little improvement, following with 22% stating a need for much improvement, and 15% stating that there was no improvement needed. Therefore, this was an issue that needed to be resolved as it was a widely expressed concern amongst participants. After watching more online tutorials on YouTube, this matter was addressed and shown to a focus group of a few members of the class who commented on its improvement. In the poster ancillary task, I gained feedback to aid me in deciding between two of my final drafts. One of the drafts had the main title above and behind Dan's head, and the other had the main title between Dan's legs, almost appearing as if he were jumping over it. After gathering a focus group of peers who were working around me at the time, including graphic design and media production students, it was unanimously commented that the draft with the main title above and behind Dan's head appeared to be composed more like a magazine front cover than a film poster. Therefore, taking aboard the feedback and now seeing everyone's comment clearly, I decided on the draft with the main title appearing between Dan's legs. This meant that an audience would not get confused with the genre of the text and mistake it for a piece of literature, for example, a magazine cover. However, the feedback process was not only used after the completion of the production of the products. After pitching the plot, costumes, characters and title to a focus group of peers in the class, they commented on the main title being too unambiguous of the film's surprise twist, taking away the thrill of the unexpected ending. Therefore, after coming up with a few more possible titles, which we posed to the focus group such as Begin Again, Restart and Rewind, they voted on Respawn, which in fact was my favourite. They stated that this was because the title suggested the video game theme due to its association with them, yet it wasn't quite as obvious as Game Over, which is overly suggesting of video games. During the post-production, the car crash effects were shown to a group of peers who were doing media courses, as we were concerned that this was the weakest part of our short and that it would let the whole film down. They were asked to comment on if the scene looked realistic, to which they replied that it needed a bit more colour correction to make the car shot and the Dan shot seem as one. Therefore, we took on board this constructive criticism and colour corrected the Dan shot to be lighter, therefore matching the car shot and the shots prior to it too for continuity. This had an impact on our creative outcomes as the car scene gained realism and so would keep the audience immersed in the narrative rather than being pulled out of it by a mismatched shot. How did you use your media technologies in the construction and research, planning and evaluation stages? During the planning of Respawn, more basic techniques were used, such as using good old-fashioned pen and paper to brainstorm any ideas and write rough scripts and storyboards. After this initial process of conceiving ideas, the use of technologies was introduced, for example, using the online program Celtx to write the 4 drafts of scripts. Using online programs like this while in the early stages of drafting is useful, as you can come back at any time and edit the script without having to rewrite it completely again, proving especially practical for Respawn, as the narrative was changed several times, even changing the final draft. The online feature of Celtex meant that when filming with a crew of 2, we could access the script on our phone rather than having to fiddle with noise-inducing pieces of paper, as well as equipment in the rain. The construction stage consisted of using many pieces of equipment in production. The Canon 700D was used to film all of the short. However, even though we used it last year, there were still some technical issues that resulted in having to refilm all of one scene all over again after seeing the raw footage. Unfortunately, we had not white balanced the camera properly, and so all of the shots had a bluish tinge to them. To solve this, I attempted to colour correct the footage in Premiere Pro, but it was less time consuming and difficult to retake the scene again on another day when we were going to film the rest of the film. We also used a Marantz sound system to record the sound with a boom microphone. However, due to filming outside near a busy road, this created issues with sound levels. However, this was edited in post-production and the background sound merged with the rest of the short. Another issue is that when AJ was directing, she spoke over the filming and sound recording to direct Tom, our actor.
Car. Noise.
So the sound had to be heavily edited in post-production to cut her out, but still have ambient sound to create realism. In filming, we used an LED light to brighten the shots if it started to get dark. This was good planning ahead, as otherwise we would have had to take even more time to film another day. After testing out the Fig Rig and the Glide Cam in the research stage, we decided to use the Fig Rig as it was smoother to use. This kept all of our shots smooth, as we used a lot of voyeuristic tracking shots to mimic that of in a video game. In the research stage, digital technology was mostly used, employing many online platforms such as video sharing websites to view short films to collate ideas. Due to mostly watching feature-length films in my spare time, I was new to the concept of shorts, and so as well as creating ideas to come up with my own, I had to learn features through watching them too. YouTube was used a lot. However, a website dedicated to showcasing shorts called Short of the Week became very useful, as I could explore the best of the best in any genre I like due to their helpful genre categories. This was helpful as I could explore each genre in the short film medium and find out how they compare to that genre in the familiar feature film medium, aiding me in finally coming up with my very own hybrid genre of fantasy comedy. The research stage also involved me producing posts on my blog, which included videos, presentations and posters. Online programs such as Canva helped me with creating posters and spider diagrams, and SlideShare enabled me to upload my PowerPoint presentations. Videos were created by editing clips in Premiere Pro, something I had learnt last year in my foundation year, and furthered through Media Academy in an extracurricular activity which includes fulfilling live briefs for real clients. In post-production, Premiere Pro was mostly used to edit the sound and footage together. It took a very long time due to the heavy editing of the sound clips and the colour correction for when we filmed when it got darker. However, it was all managed in the time period. After Effects was also used to create the special effect needed for the car crash scene. There were so many issues with this, as it was so time consuming, and when compiling the two pieces of footage over each other and cutting out the image we needed from the top layer, no matter how much it was rendered, random fragments from the top layer kept appearing in each frame. However, the faults in the car crash scene were solved just hours before the deadline, which was a bit stressful, as we had planned to have it done by at least a couple of days before. The new and improved effects had an impact on our creative outcomes, as it looked neater and more professional as it was less messy. The updated effects also created realism for the audience, and therefore made the narrative more believable, as unrealistic effects did not snap the audience out of their immersion of the story. The evaluation stage involved me using an external Zoom USB microphone to record the voiceover. I also downloaded all of my footage to use to support my evaluative statements with imagery. This was compiled together by using Premiere Pro and exported to YouTube for easy embedding on my blog.